I might ask the first question just to get things going. But I think, James, you hit the nail on the head there that, and it's been our experience over the last 5 years on each project, BIM seems to die at some point. It falls off the cliff, as you say. And and for people who aren't doing BIM, the common response as to why they're not doing it is because nobody's asking for it. So, people don't, the sort of client FM community don't seem to see the value in the information for the life cycle of the building. So my question really on the BIM for Retail group, who's involved in that group, and is the FM community involved in discussion in that group, and what is the stumbling block? Why don't they see the value in information?
Good question. We don't have any regular FM presence on the forum, apart from members of each client organisation that have some knowledge of FM, or they're linked into the FM parts of their business. So that's probably something where we could benefit from having some involvement from the FM community. I think the reason it falls down is, and I know we were talking about this last night, I think that it's almost like they're two separate organisations and two separate companies, generally across the industry. I don't think that's just retail. And those people that are working in the design environment, I think they fully understand how the information is being used and what tools and techniques are at their disposal to achieve that, and therefore can see the benefits in the facilities management world. But they don't understand the process in the FM world. And I think it's the complete reverse, the other way around. So those in FM understand their role and their job, but they don't necessarily understand the tools and the techniques that are available to them. And the two need to come together and understand that. So my experience is that when you sit down and you map out the individual processes that people are going through, that's the point when people go, the penny drops and go, yes, that can help us there. And I don't think it's as simple as just saying, you guys, you need to do BIM, and they go, okay. You need to physically walk through where the benefits are and identify them, otherwise people don't see the reality.
Yeah, I would agree with that, yeah. I mean, that's part of the reason why we're trying to now engage directly with the FM contractors on the store that was handed over on Monday, but it's just taking those baby steps and keep pushing and to engage. It's all about communicating and collaborating.
Any other questions?
Thanks, guys. Great presentations. Just on Ralph's theme with FM, what's the driver for BIM implementation with retail clients? Is it the sales and marketing, or the visualization, or schedule, getting to market faster? Or is OpEx coming into it? I mean, I was at a presentation a couple of years ago where one of the guys from Waitrose, John Lewis, gave a presentation and said that their commitment, they see carbon as being the metric, that if they can reduce expenditure on running costs, it's cutting down carbon. So carbon is the metric they use to evaluate their designs and their buildings, and BIM gives them that. So really, is OpEx on clients' radars? Is it operational expenditure? Is it costs, running costs? Does that mean more profit? And the second question then is, of the members of the design team, which member of the design team is most reluctant to get involved in the BIM process? I mean, and I fear you're going to say the QSs.
Do you want to take the first one and take the second?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the BIM in the retail environment is being driven by the construction teams. It's not an operational piece of innovation that's been brought to the table and being pushed in the opposite direction. It's coming from a capital expenditure viewpoint. But I think, without exception, on all of the retail clients, it's sold to the exec to get the capital, the sign-off to actually progress the projects. I think it's sold on the basis that it gives both construction and operational benefits. But I think the construction benefits are the ones that are easiest for the construction teams to quantify. The operational ones are very, very difficult. And I know, if you speak to David Philp or anybody on the government's BIM task group, they say that the ratio of kind of design, construction, operate, I think the ratio is something like 110, 100 of where the benefit is. But that quantification of that 100 is so difficult. So at the moment, it's predominantly been driven by construction. And I think until there's a cultural change or some substantial case studies come out to prove those benefits, I think it's going to be quite a long and hard journey.
To the design team.
Well, just on that point, I mean, I think just over probably the last 5 years, there's certainly been an emphasis on the capex side of things. You know, there's a drive for value on that side of things, and you know, the other part of it is that the OPEX side haven't really been engaged fully yet, and I think that's for clients to challenge themselves to bring the OPEX side of the business, the FM side, to the table, to challenge those guys to get involved in the discussions internally before even it happens externally.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then with the design team question, just on retail with their own experience, we actually feel that the structural engineers are ahead of the architects. Now, some of the other architects here may not agree with that, but it's just from our own experience, some of the guys that we've been working with, structural engineers could have been using Revit for 6 or 7 years. Then it's the architects, then M&E, and then, yeah, you're right, I think lastly QSs, but interestingly enough, we've gone out to some of the big players and asking them to provide us with feedback on their experiences of where they actually see the true value of BIM. And we haven't got a terrible lot of feedback coming from them. But we just have to keep asking that question, and eventually we'll, and I'm sure you've come across it, James, where you've had hands-on experience where you can actually say, yes, in that scenario, comparing the two, there was a saving of X amount of pounds, but that's really what the client wants to hear. What am I going to get out of it?
Yeah, I think I agree. My experience is that the QS and the mechanical electrical is probably the other way around in the order, in the pecking order. I think I tend to see QS as reluctant, but once they get into it, they'll just kind of bite the bullet. And I think the fact that you know, the institution is helping the QSs get better at what they're doing. Mechanical electrical side, or what I tend to see more of is people post-processing a design in Revit rather than using BIM. So they won't actually do the collaboration and the coordination and actually get it right. They'll still work in some degree of 2D, and then they'll do a conversion at the end because you're requiring a BIM deliverable at the end of it. And I think there was an acid test. If we took away the requirement to do BIM, I think structure and architecture in most retail organisations now would probably continue to do it. The QSs, I think, are seeing the benefit. I think M&E would just go back to 2D tomorrow if they had the chance. That's my experience. I'm not speaking for the whole industry.
No, I completely agree. I mean, the bottom line, I think, is it depends on your client base, the client demand, and also the industry you're working in. So if you're working on smaller projects, maybe there's not that demand. That's not to say there's little pockets of really good work being done all across Ireland and the UK, and those are the type of guys who are going to be doing it anyway. But in the main, I think it's really client and industry, or facet of the industry driven as to who is where with their competence in BIM. But generally in the pecking order, I'd follow the guys in that, in terms of who's ahead and who's last.
I would put last of all main contractor.
Sorry?
I would put main contractor right at the back of the queue. I haven't seen many contractors that have actually come up and said we want to do this. And I think with the way the contracts are, they can pretty much just delegate responsibility to the design team and not actually do anything and still deliver BIM without actually having to touch it, which I think is a bad thing because they don't get the benefits from it.
Thanks, guys, for great presentations. Again, the question is, do you think it's BIM for retail is easier than for other industries, given that many of the practices might be multidisciplinary already, and also your client maybe is smart clients because they're dealing with big data, point of sale systems, that kind of stuff?
That's a good question. I think the repeat nature of retail predisposes itself to BIM. I think the fact that you look at one-off buildings and people are creating content as a one-off, there's quite a lot of labour time goes into that. With retail, we tend to have libraries of content that gets reused, so I think there's a lot of efficiency savings there. I think the same project teams tend to work on similar projects, so you get quite a lot of learning there, which is a good thing. And I think that we tend to use smaller consultancies, which I think, in my opinion, are quicker at adapting to adopting BIM. I think SMEs are, although the costs are more onerous to them, because if you've got 10 licenses, 60 grand to a small company is a lot of money. 60 grand is a lot to anybody, but to a small company, that's a big proportion of your profit margin. But at the same time, they're very quick at adapting. It's easier for them to control the design in-house and to get the consistency and decide that they're going to do it. So I think BIM in the retail sector is easier than other sectors, for definite. So what's your view as an architectural practice?
Yeah,
because you work outside of retail as well, don't you?
I think there's other industries there that it would be similarly easy to adopt it. The likes of the healthcare side of things, where again the massive libraries of content that could be reused. There's some aspects of the retail side of things that it actually makes it quite difficult because of the fast pace of programs. For the Simply Foods that we were showing on the presentation, for example, it's a 6-week fit out. It's mobilised very quickly, so without contractor involvement, maybe at the design phase. So again, to get the client or the contractor involved and get that benefit and design coordination, some of that side of things, it can be quite difficult from a retail perspective. And also change happens very quickly in retail as well. And change being small amounts of work on a lot of different stores, which is quite hard to keep track of using any type of software. So that side of things does make it a challenge from a retail perspective as well. So there's challenges and benefits on both sides, I think.
Yeah. Questions? Johnny and Sean, from a designer's point of view, and having a long-term client relationship like M&S, do you see an increasing role for designers to become engaged with projects on a longer-term basis rather than just, as designers we tend to think of just the construction period and go on to the next project, but there would seem to be a role of working with clients and managing their information for the long term, for projects. Or do you think that's a role that the FM community should take on themselves?
You're talking about the actual content, the library content, and the management of that, or? Well,
to avoid what James is saying, where the information just kind of gets parked at the end, that you actually work with your client for the life of the building, maintaining the information when changes happen, you implement those changes for them, or do you see that?
I think that, there's a difficulty with that, handing over the design, the digital model for FM then to manage, carry out changes. I can see it from both sides, Ralph, because who then owns the model, and where does the liability rest if somebody starts to tweak with that? I can see the benefit of the architect holding on to it and managing that, but how you keep track of all that, I think, would be a tall order.
Wouldn't it? Yeah. I think I can see, just thinking out loud, I guess, from a client perspective, when we're looking at that, the whole life cycle of data, and you go over into FM, at the moment, if you look at the current process of how people manage data, it's all done in the 2D process, and either the data isn't updated, it's just done on site, or it's updated and it's just put onto a repository somewhere for someone else to then go and look at in some years in the future. And you need to take a decision, I think, on what information you do update and what information you don't, based on who's going to use it. It might be that, in a room there's maybe, in a room like this, maybe the lights get changed every year, maybe the door gets changed, I don't know, and that's the sort of information that you do want to maintain, but the rest of it, you don't. But you still need to ask the question, who's going to do it, and who takes responsibility and liability, and if you were to inherit a project that another architect had done, would you validate and warrant that information, or would you only warrant the changes that you made? And if then that architect comes back to then do an extension or a remodel, do they take the previous model and then go and do a survey so that they can satisfy their PI, or do they use your model? I think it's probably more about risk than it is about the principle of having somebody do it, because I think everybody would agree that if you can maintain the data cost effectively, you would do. It's just more about the roles and responsibilities and the liability.
I mean, realistically, if it's design related, we would do that anyway. As part of the process, for M&S, they employ a number of architects, and if there's upgrades to their stores, if there's changes in the retail layout, if there's changes in the back of house layout, and looking at different things like that, we would be part of that anyway. But if it comes to the likes of a light fitting or a door, which is in the FM domain, that becomes outside of what we generally do, and that would be a step change if that was to happen. It's not to say the possibility isn't there, but it's definitely a bit away from, I suppose, what the thought process is at the minute.
Yeah, so what I'm thinking is that either designers have to sell the concept to clients that they need longer term engagements to maintain the data. Because I think if you think about it, the value in the information, clients have paid a lot of money to create that information during design stage. And if you see it as a valuable asset, you should maintain it. It's the same as a piece of equipment. If you spend a lot of money buying a piece of equipment, you want to make sure you look after it. And the same, if you spent a lot of money creating design information, and you see the value in the data, you'd want to maintain it. So maybe that's an opportunity for designers to have longer term engagements. Just an idea. Any other questions? It's a microphone. Yeah.
Thank you for the excellent presentations. I just had an issue, or just a question in relation to the handover of the models at the end of the process. How do you deal with the intellectual property? With the models, wouldn't you be afraid that, a designer would change after, let's say, 5 years and would then take on typically your libraries, or would you ensure that the data would be formatted in such a way, like, that it's in an IFC format, and that, it would be less, exchangeable?
What we have done to date is any models that we have released onto the M&S portal has really been issued for information. It's the output that has been used as the tender documentation, but the model is there for information, and it's really trying to challenge and to see how the contractors would pick that up and to improve on it and to start to add, record information. There's no real change from the way that we work in 2D. The copyright is with M&S, so the model will be M&S's model.
Yeah, it's the same.
Yeah.
Right. I think if that's all, I can wrap it up. I just wanted to thank you for fantastic presentations. It's great work you guys are doing. It's really inspiring to see, and hope it inspires other people to do the same. So thanks very much. Let's give them a great... Thank you.